here in this little anthology, and there are copies outside, I think, if anybody's interested in it. The information we put in here came out of Assisi's archives. It's not Ramati's musings on what happened during World War II. And when I watched the film, the one time I did watch it, they make Mueller look like a fool. And he was far from a fool. I forget who played Mueller, if it was James Mason. I don't remember who's up there playing the parts. Huh? Oh, Maximilian Chanel. Thank you. Thank you. I forgot that. So anyway, the true story of what happened kept coming out by Donaldo Brunacci, if you will. And let me tell you some of the other things. Donaldo, when he opened Casa Papa Giovanni, okay, the place where many of you who came with me to Assisi, we've slept there, that house was built in the 1600s. It belonged to one family. Now it holds 60 people. And we use that as our base there, if you will. And Donaldo, always a reader, he opened a bookshop for theology and spirituality. And he sat in the bookshop every day in his later years. He would just sit there reading a book, greeting people. And one day, a family came in from Israel. And they knew that somehow that was the place they should go. They went there and they met Donaldo. They didn't know who he was. And they said to Donaldo, "Can you tell us where Donaldo's grave is?" And he says, "I'm here." You're talking to him. And the family was so excited that he was alive because he had preserved them, helped save the life of their mother. Okay? And they came back from Israel to thank him. They wanted just to go to the grave. Did not know they were going to find him alive. He died at 92. Okay? Donaldo began to be recognized more and more as what he was, the protagonist for the Jewish people in World War II in Assisi. And that started with this place here. This college honored him, and we have all that in photos in Assisi. This college honored him a few years ago. And then other Franciscan colleges and universities began to pick up on that. Cardinal Stritch, for example, in Milwaukee. This was St. Bonaventure's award, and that award there is from Yad Vashem. And I will speak about that in a moment, if you will. St. Bonaventure's University honored Donaldo with their Gaudete Medal. The Graphic Arts Association of Philadelphia, they honored him for the false identity papers that was so well printed. So, isn't that a great honor? You got it for producing these false papers. And some of the Hebrew recognitions for Donaldo, once he came here, temples or synagogues began to engage him. So he went to Temple Emmanuel in New Jersey, the Federation of Jewish Agencies in Philadelphia, the Holocaust Museum in D.C., and then Yad Vashem. Not in that order, by the way. Yad Vashem happened in the 70s. They contacted Donaldo, and they wanted to give him the honor of, I think it's called a righteous Gentile. Am I correct on that? And they wanted to make him a righteous Gentile. And he said, "Thank you, but I won't accept that unless you make the bishop as well, grant the same honor to Bishop Nicolini." And the state of Israel said, "Well, he's dead, and we don't do it for dead people." So Donaldo said, "Well, then I'll bring the bishop who took his place, and you could give him the medal." And Israel agreed. So the bishop, the next bishop, went with Donaldo to Israel in the, give me a second, in the mid-1970s, and they planted the tree. In fact, in Assisi, when we put out some of the artifacts of Donaldo, he has little pieces from that tree that they put out there, if you will. They planted a tree in his memory, and they gave him the medal that you had seen up there before, recognizing him as a righteous Gentile. Steven Spielberg sent a camera crew from his studios in California, who interviewed and filmed Donaldo speaking his memories for 1 week. And I think Spielberg has a kind of an archive, if you will, of these types of interviews that he's done with people throughout the world. And he has Donaldo there, if you will. The mayor of Assisi honored Donaldo. The president of Italy, they gave him, Donaldo liked wearing it. They call it, the medal is called the Cavaliere della Gran Croce. They made him a Knight of the Great Cross. But what he liked about it was they gave him a big ribbon to wear. So he would, the color of the flag of Italy, with a beautiful medal at the base of it. And he used to, he would talk to our pilgrims, I told him, put your medal on. He would put that thing over his shoulders, and he would talk to the people. But he and Spielberg were honored by Italy at the very same time. He was honored here in New York by Bloomberg, by James McGreevey when he was governor of New Jersey, and Representative Michael Ferguson of New Jersey. And it was Mike Ferguson who brought Donaldo into Congress, our Congress, to say the opening prayer of the time that he was in Washington, D.C., which we closed the book with that prayer. It's a beautiful prayer. And Donaldo, was difficult for him to say anything in English, but he did well that day. And if I can conclude with some stories on the bishop, just a few. Bishop Niccolini. He was Bishop of Assisi for 45 years. Long time, from 1928 into the 70s. I forget when it ended. You can figure that out. When the Jewish people started coming, they came, a lot of them, with their books, their ritual items, stuff they would use for worship, items they would use, sacred items for worship, and all of these had to be concealed. The bishop was a bricklayer in his former life. So in the bishop's palace dates from around the 4th century. The base of the palace had always been a dungeon. So they went to the dungeon of the bishop's palace, and Donaldo would hold a little candle because they couldn't use electricity. He would use a little candle there, and the bishop started laying stone, creating a false room in which they put the Talmud and other sacred items, anything that was precious to any Hebrew person who came into the city of Assisi. They put the wall up. When somebody would leave, they had to open the wall and redo the whole thing. And Donaldo would say, oh, it was difficult wielding the pick to open up the wall, but they did it that well. This bishop, at one point, Assisi was completely full of refugees. The total number they estimate, because they would not keep records of how many people or refugees they saved, especially the Jewish number. They estimate about 250 to 300 Jews were saved in that little town from 1943 on, if you will. But the bishop went home one evening and a Jewish family was waiting in his office. And he says, there's no room in the city. He says, but I think I could sleep in my office so you could have my bedroom. The bishop gave his bedroom to the Jewish family. A great man, a great man. He's buried in the Cathedral of San Rufino. He was from Trent, actually. He's not an Assisi person. And he died up in Trent, but the Assisi people wanted him back. And they took the body and buried him in Assisi. And lastly, in this book here, this little anthology, we have a copy of some notes that the bishop wrote. And he said in one of his notes in Italian, "Diffidato Padre Rufino." I don't trust Father Rufino, the friar. Now, why did he write that? Well, when Valentin Mueller was withdrawing with his troops from Assisi, and since it was a hospital city, they left Assisi 10 million lira, which was a lot of money in those days, 10 million lira worth of medical supplies to care for people and the wounded. Somehow, Rufino got involved with that, and they don't know where the supplies went. So the bishop said, "Diffidato a Padre Rufino." I don't trust him. So there's a little, Rufino did some good things for the Jewish people, so we're not going to minimize that, but there were some issues that we found in the archives when we were doing our research. It's 12 o'clock. I think I should shut up. Unless you have any quick questions, I'll try to respond to them if I can. Yes, please. Some came from France. That I know for sure. So they did come from other areas because they came to Italy because they knew the Allies were coming up the boot. And the Allies by 43, 44 had already reached Rome. They were in Assisi by June 18, 1944, when Mueller left with his men from one gate. They entered the other gate. So yes, there were people. I know for sure the French family that came down, and there were others. But mainly Italian Jews. Italian Jews. I grew up, again, a mile from here. I grew up in that Italian ghetto that may be still remnants over there. I never knew there was such a thing as an Italian Jew until I went to Italy. And for me, that was a new learning. And also, I love going to eat in the Jewish quarter. The food is excellent. They've got a whole style of Italian food that really touches my palate very well. So I just want to say that to you, too. Mueller did not connect with Berlin and acted on his own. That was treasonous for him. That's what I've been told. That was treasonous for him to act on his own. Berlin was not responding. However, he acted in consort with Bede Hess, an American who was the leader of the conventual Franciscan friars in the city at that time. So Mueller, Bede Hess, Bishop Niccolini, and the German commander of all of Italy, Colonel Kesselring. And Kesselring gave Mueller the green light to do what he was doing, and so Mueller did it. But just a footnote, Kesselring and Mueller came from the same hometown. So Kesselring was really protecting Mueller, and he knew he was doing that. The Allies had already bombed Monte Cassino. Okay, and now I don't know if anybody's been there. I've been to the new place. It's quite insipid as a building in Italy. You know it has no antiquity to it. Although we built the same exact thing that was there before. The antiquity's gone, but all the art was destroyed in that bombing. They had taken out of there what they had to take out. And Assisi was listed next. The only way to offset that with the Geneva Convention was to get the city declared a hospital city. That was made known to the Allies. So the Allies did not bomb it, because Berlin had never given him the green light. And so Kesselring and he went ahead with it, with all the work that was happening. And the Vatican was behind it. The Vatican was behind it. Yeah, she's verifying what I said before. They were more afraid of the Italians who were trying to hover around Mussolini how do you call it, Repubblica di Salò? Repubblica di Salò. He established this new government in northern Italy, and she was living in that area at the time. They were more afraid of these Italians than they were of the SS. Thank you for sharing that.